How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bodacious Rant with your ever so handsome and loving host, Burnin' Rye. Hope everybody's been doing good, with the fires and the weather, because I swear to God, getting up early in the morning for work, it's freaking freezing, and I'm just like, I hate life. I always say that with every season. Like, I wish it was cold. I wish it was hot and just I'd rather melt. But then when the summer hits, I'm like, I'm ready for cozying up weather, bundle up weather. So
It's always the extremes.
it really is, and that's just I don't know what I would call that. Maybe insanity, maybe just hypocrisy. Who knows? But that's not the point right now. Anyways, we're talking about a show that, again, I've been saying this a lot lately with a lot of content we've been watching. A show I never really expected to do well or anything, or I didn't know how I felt about it. It's just because I'm kind of getting that Star Wars fatigue in a way where I'm like, at this point, what is the point of making these shows, especially since they're still kind of revolving around the same thing? And if you haven't guessed it, we're talking about the latest Disney Plus series, Skeleton Crew, which is a Star Wars story or adventure, however you want to see it, starring the amazing Jude Law, who's even when I haven't seen a lot of his work, it's the stuff I have seen him in. He's always like a silver lining to me. So I always like him in that. Nick Frost from the what's that ice cream called in those movies? The trilogy, Cornetto trilogy. Thank you, and a bunch of other movies, especially Fighting with My Family. That he was in that one. Jaleel White, from oh my God, what was that show growing up? I don't remember. I can't think about it right now, but he was Jaleel, and yeah, a bunch of other actors I've never really heard of, mostly kid actors, which is cool. We'll just give our general rantings because we are going to get into spoilers now. So if you haven't watched all of it, you'll probably want to stop after we give our rantings. Come on back after you've caught up. But if you do happen to like this video, give us a thumbs up just to show your support. Ring the bell for notifications, and of course subscribe just because it's always nice to see people who want to join our crew, our tribe, if you will. So this is definitely the most kids show, aside from the animated series, but even then, those kind of adult. This is definitely more of the family-friendly, like kid-friendly series of Star Wars that they've done, in which, a group of kids living on this planet, they live a very suburban, plain life. One of them seeks out for adventure, and him and his friends, they stumble upon a ship and go out onto a journey in the galaxy, a galaxy they are not familiar with whatsoever. And that's where they meet Jude Law, who's a prisoner of a bunch of space pirates. So I would say this show is probably the best version of, or a combination of Goonies, Treasure Planet, and Pirates of the Caribbean. That's probably what the best three I would say, just because, again, space pirates. And there are also some fantasy aspects of it with the pirate genre. And then also just because of Star Wars, it's very sci-fi, and Treasure Planet because there are a couple characters similar to that. And after the first few episodes, I'm like, okay, it's not bad. It's okay. It's good, but definitely more of a kid show. But then I feel like the last half, I actually had way more fun with it, specifically the last episode. And it's definitely nice to have Star Wars content that isn't completely reliant on, the Galactic Civil War, the Old Republic, or not the Old Republic, but the Republic we knew in Clone Wars, the Clone Wars saga, and also the Skywalker. There really is no mention of Skywalker in this show, which is kind of a nice refresh. So, with everything being said, before I can get into my spoiler thoughts, and I'll pass off to you, Bern, because I get sick of myself talking, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, amazingly. Do I recommend this for everyone? If you're a Star Wars fan, yes. If you're not so much, if you have kids, this is also more prone to you. Just, give them something to watch, have fun with it. And it just finished up, and all the episodes are around 30 to 40 minutes, so it's an easy binge. So I really liked it. I found myself enjoying it, especially the last episode. It kind of brought all the nostalgia from like the Goonies, like E.T., all the classics growing up. So, Bern, what are your overall thoughts on this, and how did you feel about the show?
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a very charming show. And I think it gets to the heart of what makes Star Wars special, which is it's an adventure story. You know, people like forget that it all started with a boy on a farm wanting more, you know, wanting to go out and have an adventure and live more life, you know. And we get a similar aspect here, but this time in suburbia. You know, we don't have the vastness, emptiness of the desert. You have the mundanity of suburbia, which I think a lot of more people can sort of relate to, wanting more other than just your normal, like, everyday life. So the fact that it's sort of embraces that spirit of what made Star Wars originally special. It's a really good call, and I think John Watts was probably the perfect person to tell a story like that because of what he was able to do with the Spider-Man story and Spider-Man Homecoming, and how he was able to direct all those kids there and make it feel authentic and realistic. And I think he nailed it. I mean, he got a lot of credit for embodying like sort of what John Hughes did back in his movies in the 80s, and here he takes more of like an Amblin Steven Spielberg approach where you have, you know, all these kids. Like you can very much see this as something like E.T. or like Super 8 or something like that, where, you know, it's like a bunch of kids in a small town having an adventure, except you trade the bicycles for little speeder bikes, you know, and you have a Star Wars story instead. So yeah, the way that he was able to do that while making the adventure within like the archetype of like a pirate story was really inspired, and definitely taking inspiration from things like Treasure Island, like you mentioned, and like those stories, you know, with Pirates of the Caribbean, and weaving that into the Star Wars makeup was a lot of fun, and I think all the casts were really great, and they played off of each other well, and I think they made really great use of all the different locations that we see in this series. Almost every episode we were in a different spot, and that's one of the things that I've come to like about like Star Wars lately, is that they're not afraid to explore the galaxy more than just Tatooine and Coruscant and planets we've seen before. So yeah, I think in terms of all that, they really nailed all that. And like you said, is definitely more geared towards the kid audience, but so was the original Star Wars. So yeah, for all those reasons, for me, this one is also going to be a 4 out of 5. I'm very surprised by how much I enjoyed the show. And yeah, this was just a good old throwback to those old adventure movies with the kids, like, you know, the Goonies and E.T. and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny how pop culture, especially all the stuff we talk about and how we react to it, it's all based on like more geared to kids and stuff to a certain extent. So it's just kind of funny. I was thinking about it. Anyways, you know, like I said, for those of you who haven't watched all of it, maybe you're in the middle of it or anything, you'll probably want to turn it off now, just because we are going to start getting spoilers. So come on back and dive deep with us once you have caught up. So yeah, like I said, you know, just after watching the first episode, I was like, okay, like this is going to be. That's where I felt like the first few episodes, I definitely got the most kids vibe. But again, that just came with the story, and I knew it came with the story with like these 4 little kids. They're very sheltered, living in a suburban life. And it was actually, this is the first time I felt like there's been any sort of type of view on suburbia, like what a suburban planet or environment would look like in Star Wars. Because we've either got the 2 extremes. You have Tatooine or you have Coruscant, you know, super populated and grimy, or nothing and just desert, and also grimy when you go to Mos Eisley. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. I think this would be the kind of put me in that mindset. Like if I were to live in a Star Wars versus this, I'm like, I'd probably pick that because that world did look pretty awesome. But I just felt like the kids it was just very too kiddie. And the main kid, Wim, oh my God, I could not stand him for majority of the season. I was like, oh, this little brat. I want to kick him. And I was like, he'd be the kid in Kmart I'd want to kick over. And he was played by Ravi Kabit. I could be saying his name wrong, Conyers. So no fault to him. He nailed the part great. And it was actually the last episode. I was like, Wim, that's my kid right there. He's awesome. But overall, I think as annoying as he was and stuff, I think the cast was great. I think the kids really nailed either the voice acting or they just got their characters down. I mean, I don't know how you felt about it, because I know when it comes to kids in either a series or a movie, the acting is going to be very hit and miss, because it's either mostly green screen or maybe their first thing or something. So I don't know how you felt about the at least the kids part of the cast.
I mean, yeah, like you said, it with kids it can be really tough because you really run the spectrum of like whether they're good or bad, you know. But I think overall here they did a pretty decent job. I mean, there were definitely moments where it's like, oh yeah, they're kids, like they don't definitely have that sort of range, but never to the extent where it, like completely took away from the scene that they were in, where as something like Mowgli and the Jungle Book, where I felt like that kid, again he wasn't given a lot to work with, but you can kind of tell he was kind of like acting at things. And here, because I guess you have a group of kids, they were able to bounce off each other pretty well. And I think the two friendships that we get, between Wim and Neil and Fern and KB, I thought they sold those really well. And I thought when the groups came together and that those conflicting dynamics between them, I thought, okay, like they're kids, they argued like I would think they would argue with each other when they have disagreements, and whenever they would come together and like scramble for a solution, it was all very believable. And that's why I mentioned John Watts' work with Spider-Man: Homecoming and those movies, because he sort of like really lets that sort of banter between the kids breathe to where it feels authentic, and it doesn't feel like, oh, they're just reading lines, they're repeating lines to each other. It's like, oh no, this feels like a real interaction between these two kids in this Halloween situation. So yeah, I thought overall they nailed it. Of course there's shortcomings because of them being kids, and you'll see those here and there, but overall I thought they did a pretty good job with working with what they had.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I think Wim for a good portion of the season he came out very just one dimensional, but at the same time, there's always those kids characters like that where it's like, they're very brash, very just kind of immature, again, children. But then they'll find their way kind of by the end of the story, and that's exactly what Wim did. So yeah, I think the kids did fine overall. Didn't really have any faults with them. I thought the most adorable one was Neil, just because it's that little elephant-looking species. I don't know what they're called, but it just reminded me of that one band player from Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. So that's why I was like, oh, we finally get to see more like him. That's awesome. And that's one thing I will say about the Star Wars shows in general that we've gotten. I'm glad we're finally exploring more species and stuff like that in the galaxy, aside from what we saw in like the main movies and everything. So it's kind of nice to do that. I will say this is the first villain, like not first villainous one, but I would say like a really good role for Jude Law, where he's not necessarily a villain, but he's definitely not a good guy either. Almost like Indiana Jones and Jack Sparrow mixed together. That's the vibe I kept getting with him because he had his foolish moments, but overall he was a pretty competent pirate character. And also Jude Law is just one of those few dudes that's ageless, so it's like it's pretty remarkable how good he looks for his age. I had a lot of fun with this character. They definitely could have done. I feel like definitely could have made him more like Han Solo, and I'm kind of glad they didn't, because Han Solo was kind of a scoundrel, but at the same time, not really. He was just kind of different, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, where like yeah, they said that he was like a rogue, but you always knew that his heart was gonna be in the right place. Definitely not the case with the Jude Law's character here, where yeah, he's a little bit more of the Long John Silver of this story. And it's funny because one of his like various nicknames is Silvo, so it's like
Yeah.
definitely a nod to that. But yeah, like I did like that he was unpredictable. He was very charming, and I thought it was fun that he had force powers. But yeah, I thought it was a fun way to bring sort of that force user s type without being like handcuffed to like any sort of Sith or Jedi. He was just kind of, oh, this is what a Force user would be doing if they weren't part of any group. He's just using his powers for more like practical purposes, grabbing things or pulling things and stuff. So yeah, overall his character was very fun, and the way he played off the kids was a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, I thought Jude Law played the role pretty well.
Yeah, and that's why I really like the last episode. I think the most is because we got his backstory in the end, and it explains so much why the way he is. I think probably one of the best ways to describe it, in which he is force sensitive, and he was getting trained by a Jedi, kind of like Ezra from Rebels, but he got the flip side of it, where he's not necessarily a Sith, but he saw his master get gunned down for Order 66. And that was the messed up thing. I was like, oh man, I'd probably do the same thing then if I was you, where I'd just be like, screw the world, man. If the galaxy's gonna be like this, I'm just gonna get my own too and do whatever I can to get it. So I think that was one of the more justifiable qualities of him. Um, and again, he was just, yeah, I think his charm, like the way he was able to work with the kids but hate him at the same time, like as a reluctant babysitter. I think that it was much like Josh Brolin's like where he played the older brother in Goonies. Like he didn't want to be there, but he had to be there because he knows the kids. So but that's also kind of the time like the Spielberg Amblin Entertainment era.
Like you always wanted him to make the right choice and be a good guy in the end, but that wouldn't have been true to his character with everything that we come to find out about him. It's like, oh no, yeah, like if he were to make the good guy turn here, it would be a kind of out of nowhere, I feel like.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely would have cheapened the entire show where it's like, oh, let's just make him a good guy because it's like we want him to be. It's like, no, you can leave him as himself. He kind of got a different side of things being with these kids, like every adventure story like that would. I think again, and with it being Star Wars, you kind of have to be picky with the design, whether it be the environment or the characters. And this show actually delivered on both really well, whether it be that pirate port in the first like couple episodes, and also the pirates that Silva was originally running with. Like his design, like with just the helmet and his suit, worked really well. Captain Brutus was a really cool like wolf-like alien to bring into the mix, and like he was like Blackbeard in a way. Like if Silva was gonna be Long John Silver, Brutus was very much like Blackbeard, just with the attire and his pistols on his belt.
I love how Silva's like helmet had that like 3-pointed hat, basically that pirate hat, like at the top. I thought that was a really cool choice.
Like Jack Sparrow's hat, and then Jaleel White's character, he had like a little laser eye, kind of like an eye patch. So there's a lot of cool little details. And Nick Frost is SM-33, even though he's like a broke asteroid and not completely there. He reminded me a lot of Martin Short's robot character from Treasure Planet, mixed with like oh my god, I can't think about it right now. But
basically like a Smee, from like Peter Pan, like that.
Kind of like
the second
that.
mate or the first mate.
Pretty much, yeah. Like he was just that character. Like I got more Treasure Planet vibes because how it's like he knew about Atten, but he kept saying like I can't say anything about it. But when the girl remembered, it was just like that moment in Treasure Planet where he put the back of his head back on. He's like, oh my god, I forgot to tell everybody before his booby trap. So that's kind of what it reminded me of, and I thought that was a great tie into another Disney property, a little throwback, unknowingly or not, but. I think overall this show killed it on the designs, and then also I think aside from that pirate port, my other favorite planet was Skull Ridge Mountain. Like I thought we were gonna go into like a completely like messed up place, and it ends up being fancy as shit, like a vacation planet now. And I was like, wow. And Nick Frost voicing it like in his pirate voice as SM-33, like the captain would be furious. What has happened to this? I'm like, I feel you. I'd be the exact same way too. So it was
just like how it was supposed to be like really atrocious and disgusting, but now it's like this luxurious spa, which looked awesome, by the way.
I forgot there's been another like show or movie that did something similar where it's like we're expecting to go into somewhere horrifying. It's like, no, it's been rebuilt as somewhere nice and fancy, and it's like, god damn it, where's my stuff? I forgot what it'll hit. I'm sure it's gonna hit me later, but I thought those are the great moments. And of course the makeup work, like specifically with Kelly MacDonald. For those of you who've ever seen Boardwalk Empire, she was in that one. The Harry Potter series, she was I forgot not Helena Ravenclaw, actually. That was Rowena's daughter. So she was the ghost of Ravenclaw in that one. She was in No Country for Old Men as Josh Brolin's wife. And I think the most recent thing we were talking about before is Brave, where she was Merida. And that's actually a movie that I don't think anybody really talks about. I gotta rewatch that, to be honest, but I thought she looked great in the makeup. Like I don't know what it is, man. Star Wars just knows how to bring back these ladies from, popular stuff and just make them look glamorous and gorgeous. Like the chick from Book of Boba Fett, who was the lady of the cantina. I forget her name, but
Oh, right.
it's like, dang, they're bringing like I'm glad they're bringing these ladies back and making them look fly, in these shows. So, yeah, it's just again the effects on this show were just always on point, which is great that Star Wars didn't disappoint on that.
Oh yeah, everything from like you said, the costume design to the creature makeup and stuff, especially with Neil. Of course, like he's there the whole time, and you believe that he's this little alien dude just like running around with everybody. To yeah, like all the different species we see, it was really really good work. Like you like to see that they didn't really pull any punches when it came to telling an interesting story by showing us it. Like showing us all these really interesting locations with all these interesting different designs. It was really good work all across the board, I think.
Yeah, and actually KB had a really cool. Her look was very simple, but I think it kind of gave me, at least my opinion, it gave me more insight into like the droid part of it. Where I know Book of Boba Fett kind of touched upon it, but to be honest, I forgot most of that show because it was garbage. But like I like how her little visor was like almost like a set of glasses for her, but that because she had an accident, that's why she became like a cyborg kind of thing. So I thought that was really cool. Like that episode where Wim helped fix her little cylinder. I thought that was just really cool. Like it's like, yeah, they're kids, but they're not stupid. Like they can be smart and resourceful. So they didn't just make them completely useless, which is good. I guess the last thing I would touch upon is just overall pacing was good, and also the ship, the Onyx Cinder. Like I like how you got two ships out of it, where the first was very like industrial, kind of. I was gonna say almost more practical, kind of like the Razor Crest. But then that episode where they explode the hull and it sheds the skin, I was like, that is genius. I've never seen that done in Star Wars. So, and then once we got that like more polished look, I was like, damn, I don't know what I like better, to be honest. It was like a mix of the Razor Crest and like that silver, that chromed out ship from Naboo in the first two episodes of the Star Wars movies. So
Oh
just
yeah, like Padme's ship.
yeah, just again, just design in general along with the effect, just fantastic. And also the other thing I would say, my last favorite thing about was actually the speeder bikes. Like, yeah, they're like little bicycles for kids, or like a little electric, like almost like touching upon the current generation of kids who can afford electric bikes. But for some reason, this just felt so much more dynamic than what we've done. Given because they're doing more like like not flips, but they're going fast and stuff for them. I just like the speeder bike scene in the beginning with Fern and KB when we're introduced to them, and then the last part where Wim's dad got involved and stuff like that. That was really cool.
It felt like there was like a little callback to Return of the Jedi with the whole Endor scene, like ducking under the logs and stuff. Yeah, that was really cool seeing instead of like one of those long scout bikes, them doing the same thing with just like I said, it should be like a bicycle in this world.
Yeah, definitely better than those Mos Espa Vespas as you were bringing up to me before this, which, oh, I hate it, but I think that's actually become a thing. Last thing, actually, how did you feel about, if you feel like we shouldn't talk about it, then we don't have to, but how did you feel about the twist that the Aten was actually basically like a treasure planet that was like secluded from the rest of the Republic? What did you think about that? Because me personally, that actually worked really well. I was like, oh my god, no, they're almost like like a cut, like Lost in Time, because even the clothes kind of felt somewhat old school in a way, but at the same time they still kind of kept up with the times. But it was just very, like, how did you feel about the whole twist with Aten and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, it was a really cool idea, to make it to where the lost planet is where our main characters are from, to sort of frame it in that way where everyone else is wondering, is this place real? Is it a myth? Does it even exist? But our main characters are from there. So it was just a really cool idea. That idea that it's like the mint for the New Republic. Just overall, it worked really well for me. Yeah, it's just cool, like to make it so that, this whole like myth, this that is in this galaxy with the way that they're framing it. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's that's where we're from. This is where we've been there. We're trying to get back. So it's like you have those two stories of them trying to get home, and then the one of like Silver and all these other pirates trying to find this place that they've heard of for who knows how long. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden these kids just sort of drop in their laps, and there's a way, and the idea that it's real. It's such a cool idea. I think it was a fun twist on that whole searching for something, searching for the long lost treasure trope.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on it, but looking back, they definitely hinted that in the episode 2 where Wim is paying with those little credits. Because I'm like, credits are no different in Star Wars. Why do these people think about? But again, it makes sense because it's like that's basically like gold bars, like out of Ron Swanson's desk. Like like here you go, I'm giving you this. So again, I thought that was just a really nice twist that instead of finding the lost planet, like they are from there. So that just made it better. But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this show. Burn, before, I don't know if you were gonna say it or not, but what did you also think about the score? Because I know music, the score is usually your go-to stuff, or like one of your favorite things about movies and shows.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like the score here was pretty serviceable. I think it wouldn't any like stick out to me any sort of way, but it played on a lot of those similar themes of the movies, like, and the stories that I mentioned, of like more of like the Steven Spielberg, the Amblin type of like wondrous, like, oh, this is what a kid would be like imagining. So I thought it took those like sort of themes, and it handled them really well with, of course, that Star Wars feel to it. So yeah, I mean, I thought it did a pretty good job, but it wasn't one that I walked away from being like, oh my god, like that was great.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It was definitely like Star Wars, but it had that more almost. It had that very like mellow adventure feel because again, it's like little kids and stuff. So there'll be the high notes and little whimsical notes in there. But yeah, no, that's fair. I see what you mean. Well, that's all I got for the show. Anything else that popped out at you, Burn, that you want to highlight before we finish it off?
Just the fact that I wouldn't mind getting more stories from these kids this side of the universe. It's something that I've wanted more from Star Wars, is it's for them to sort of branch out with the type of stories they want to tell, and we've kind of gotten that with this series and like something like Andor. Well, very different, but I like the idea of them, stretching out the genres and making it a little bit more broad and taking some sort of risks, as opposed to sort of the typical, light side versus dark side type stories that we usually get. So yeah, I hope they continue on this trend of trying to do different things, despite what other people may feel. I think that they did a pretty good job with this one, and sort of telling a different type of story that we've seen while still embodying what makes Star Wars special.
Yeah, I think the only thing I wouldn't mind seeing, like aside from newer stories, I just thought about was the Cobb Vanth series because I know Timothy Olyphant survived the Book of Boba Fett. Hasn't really been any word on that, so I don't know if it's in limbo or maybe they just pulled the plug on it. But wouldn't mind seeing more like genre bending stories, like how Mandalorian and Boba Fett were kind of like westerns in a way. I wouldn't mind if they had more fun with that, but that'll about do it for all of us here. So, like I said, for those of you who did happen to watch all the show like we did, please let us know what you thought about it in the comments. We'd love to get your feedback and opinions in on there. But until next time, everyone, we got a bunch more stuff coming out as it is the beginning of 2025. So bear with us. And until next time, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and may the Force be with you.